Hey there, if there's one community that keeps on giving, it has to be the Half-Life community. Even after the hundreds, if not thousands of Half-Life mods I've played, I keep finding new ones that still manage to surprise me, even if they've been around for ages. Today we're taking a look at the Citizen series that first released 17 years ago, with its final part releasing in 2014, 11 years ago. Yeah, 2014 really was 11 years ago. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. The Citizen quickly managed to become one of my favorite mods of all time by picking up my favorite aspects of Half-Life 2 and expanding upon them in the greatest of ways. Let me get straight into summarizing, analyzing and reviewing the Citizen and explaining all the exact reasons I fell in love with it. Before we do that, consider subscribing. Most of you haven't yet. The Citizen starts out with the unnamed protagonist, aka the Citizen, in their apartment, which promptly gets raided by Metro cops. After a short blackout, you awake again to your torn up apartment, after which you get to explore the building you're in. By doing this, you quickly find certain artifacts you can use to easily date this mod. For example, the usage of the Father Gregory model in a different context, or being able to press a button that says "Do not press" to spawn manhacks you have no way of killing that will mess up any scripted sequence you're in. And of course, most classic of all, voice acting done on regular headset microphones.
Hey man, where's my TV? I loaned it to you 3 weeks ago. You were only supposed to have it for a day, and you've dodged me ever since.
That being said, the voice acting this mod features is actually some of the best I've witnessed in a Half-Life mod, especially for a mod as old as this one, which is good news because there's a lot of it. Throughout these mods there are tons of unique characters, which is perhaps my favorite thing about the series, which I'll get back to later. We quickly meet the first major character, Argento. He seems to be living in the same building as us, which is where he shows us his device that allows him to control city scanners, including causing them to self-destruct. In my headcanon, I love to think Argento learned this from Russell. He then tells us to go visit Larry, who has a car shop across the street. To do this, however, we need to sneak out, which involves actual stealth mechanics. Stealth mechanics are something the mod does on a few occasions, and pulls off quite well if you ask me. The level design is surprisingly detailed for a mod of this age too. It does have some rough corners, but it mostly consists of complex architecture and enough detail to last you a lifetime. If I had to describe this mod's level design in one word, it would be crowded, which I very much mean as a positive. We then meet Larry.
Welcome to Larry's Garage. I'm Larry, CEO, CFO, Chief Cook and Bottle Washer.
Larry is our way to get started in the Resistance. He tells us to go find Mo, a man running a grocery store, as Mo can help us more than he can. Before we leave, we have the option to mess up Larry's shop, to which he'll actually comment. These are the kind of details that I love in a Half-Life mod.
Oh, nice work. I see you follow instructions real good.
We quickly find the HEV suit in the canals, to which you'll notice an interesting gameplay choice that will be both in this game and its sequel. You cannot sprint. And for a bit of a controversial opinion, I actually love this change. The Citizen adjusts for this by never having you walk that great distances by foot, and being marginally slower overall makes you take in the environment more. I don't think it fits into every mod, don't get me wrong. But in a mod like the Citizen that involves a lot of listening, following characters, and generally more tight environments, it's totally fine. Story-wise, there isn't much going on from this point forward up until way later, so there are a lot of highlights to mention. First off, the Citizen continuously pulls off unique environments not seen before in the world of Half-Life and seamlessly integrates it into City 17, like driving the airboat through flooded parts of the city. There's also a church or a theater, and even more in the sequels. I also love how you can clearly tell that the level designers had their fun with the maps, one of which being at this scene. We find a couple on this basketball court and see how one of them gets shot by a sniper, to which we see the reaction of the partner, screaming and crying in horror. My favorite moment being the sniper we kill, for which they specifically designed some scaffolding right in front of the window so that the sniper's body bounces down like a pinball machine. In 2008, physics like that of Half-Life 2 were still a rare sight, especially to have a toy box like Half-Life 2 to play around in it with. I can only imagine how many people reloaded their save over and over again to watch the body tumble down again and again. In the church we find a woman caring for flowers, saying they're the only flowers growing in City 17. This is the setup for a scene that will be very beautiful later on, so just keep that in mind. We eventually reach a theater in which rebels have built their base, which is where we get told of our plans to kill Dr. Breen. According to the information from a rebel we haven't met yet named Marcus, Breen will be holding a speech at a nearby Combine-controlled hall. To pull this plan through, we come across Larry from the intro, as well as Argento, who uses his city scanner hacking tool to open a way into the building. We sneak our way inside without being noticed, which involves us putting on a Combine uniform to disguise ourselves. This uniform promptly gets removed from us again by an advisor. Yep, we've got quite the boss battle at our hands it seems. And by seems I truly mean seems, because it simply disappears. We come to find that Marcus is an imposter and is actually working with the Combine and trapped us all in a room here. We fight our way out however, and we do actually catch a glimpse of Dr. Breen, oddly enough. We kill Marcus and find the room in which Breen records his speeches, to which Larry takes control and motivates the people to keep on fighting. We are now getting to the ending of the first entry of this mod series, and it's perhaps my least favorite part of it. We enter a train to go somewhere, the advisor arrives, kills the 2 people accompanying us, and it seems we are about to meet our end when G-Man spawns in and explodes the advisor. This is so goofy that it's almost cool again, to be honest, but I would have much preferred a different ending any day. We then get placed on an urban graveyard with Dog. Yippee! It then simply fades to black. Now, the first part of The Citizen did a lot of things I loved, but it's a sequel that I love a whole lot more, The Citizen Returns. Now, I mentioned there being 2 sequels, which is because the sequel was originally split up into 2 parts, which when the second half released, the first half was merged into the second half and both became The Citizen Returns. And The Citizen Returns has quickly managed to become one of my top 3 in-universe Half-Life mods of all time. I'm gonna save my complete review for the first part for the ending, because in my head I mostly just treat them as one big mod. The Citizen Returns starts out with a small G-Man speech followed by the player laying next to train tracks. A citizen finds us and brings us to a medical station. Laying in a hospital bed, we see the fate of a less lucky soldier as his significant other cries for him as he passes away from his injuries. Larry returns as he is also stationed at this base. Shortly after this, Combine comes storming in and eventually manage to capture Larry. The rest of this mod will consist of the player, Argento, and whoever else is around trying to free Larry. Another character we get introduced to is Sarah, the sister of Argento. Even though the names and voice actresses tell a different story, I like to believe her to be the same woman seen in the first part who was caring for the flowers in the church. I'll let you know why later. We go through some cool environments like this ice rink. The visuals of this mod generally have improved a lot since the first one. We also meet some more interesting people along the way and eventually reach a luxury apartment. Again, a very interesting environment. We then catch a TV broadcast of Larry being obviously forced to read out a message that denounces the resistance. Okay, now, you probably remember the Jeff chapter in Half-Life Alyx. I'm not gonna go too in depth in case you don't, but basically, it was a very scary chapter in the middle of Half-Life Alyx that, for all intents and purposes, could have been left out easily. It doesn't progress the story and doesn't necessarily fit into the rest of the game. That being said, of course, it is the best chapter of the game, in most people's opinion. So it was certainly the right choice to include it. The Citizen Returns does a similar thing here, as we enter a casino. I love gambling. And it's surprisingly eerie. We suddenly see hallucinations of people walking around in casinos as if it was still active. Similar to those shitty haunted Gmod maps you may have played before. Whatever dumbass made those. We also hear a ton of noises. And it turns out that this all isn't for nothing, and that there truly is a creature roaming this casino. I'm not gonna spoil it, just so I can get more people to play it. It was certainly a creative new enemy, though they really are pushing the boundaries of what one could consider canon. Though the enemy of the Jeff chapter wasn't the usual monster we'd seen either, so perhaps it's the same kind of thing? The architecture in the casino is insanely cool, and as we leave through the garage we find a new character named Arthur, which is the same name as this guy earlier. I have no idea why or how this happened, because these clearly aren't the same guy, right? It turns out we trapped ourselves here and we have to wait until the morning where someone will come to let us out. I believe this was simply done to skip the night as nighttime levels didn't fit into their plans, which is cleverly done actually. Next morning we wake up to a guy telling us that the Combine have announced the execution of Larry with a torture device. We now simply have to leave this parking garage, which we aren't told about and instead get hit with infinitely spawning Combine. I was fighting here for like 10 minutes. A bad practice that probably reminds you of Hunt Down the Freeman's train fight. Rightfully so. It's the same bad practice of infinitely spawning enemies when you're supposed to continue but aren't told so. We now arrive at the coolest section of this entire mod. Argento has rallied up people in an office building next to the square at which Larry will be executed. The 6 people get to vote on a plan on how to save Larry. When it comes to a stalemate between the 3 options, the player now decides how you will go about saving Larry. This is so cool. The mod up until this point hasn't yet featured any stealth mechanics, which is something some people enjoy more than others. So, this mod made it optional here, among more different approaches. I tested all of them and they are all seriously great. My only as nitty of a pick as possible would be that depending on the option you choose, Larry will arrive in a different way that is more convenient for that chosen option, meaning that if you replay all of these options, it's somewhat immersion breaking. But again, this is huge nitpick. This section is a huge amount of fun and really well executed. No pun intended. My favorite is probably the sniper route, especially since we get to keep the crossbow afterwards. No matter which way you choose, we leave together with Larry while the rest fight off the Combine. And originally, this is where the mod ended, with a room crashing in on Larry and the player. This was thankfully removed once the second half of this mod released, and instead we arrive at a train station and fight our way through some destroyed buildings. And you can really tell that these maps were made after those of the first half, because these maps look even more polished. We get to drive around the airport together with Larry, who sits at the back. We come across a woman living in a hut on the sludge, who warns us of mines up ahead. And when a gunship arrives, we get the RPG to fight it, which we get to keep afterwards. An optional encounter with an extra story, adventure and fitting reward? Perfection. We eventually arrive at my favorite place of both mods, which is a rebel base in the canals. There are characters living their life, it's properly lived in, it features stories you can read that mention Freeman and the events of Half-Life 2, it features returning characters like Arthur No. 2 and Sarah, who's again sitting in front of flowers. But this time they're growing at a memorial site, honoring the fallen in the fight against the Combine. And this is all after the mention of the flowers in the church being the only growing flowers in City 17. This is way too beautiful, I swear. Also RIP Odessa apparently, and John Patrick Laurie. Thanks mate! Larry then tells us what's next, which is a plan to take out a Combine water treatment facility, specifically the one where they make the chemicals that cause you to forget whenever you drink a can of Dr. Breen's. An insanely great way to tie stuff into the main game's timeline. This is exactly what I love to see mods doing. Show us another perspective and have it be relevant enough, but also not intervene into the main story of Half-Life 2 to a point where retcons or similar may be needed. Taking out the water treatment facility that is directly responsible for this scene in Half-Life 2 is awesome. We then make our way to the facility. The player drives the airboat and the citizens follow by regular boat, which is just such a fun idea. And unique too. The water treatment facility is a great example of Combine architecture done right. We have the cellar that only has minimal Combine technology integration, while the building up top is entirely built by the Combine basically. Doing it this way, it actually feels like the Combine reused the structure, which is part of the environmental storytelling that made the original Half-Life 2 so great. The Combine may be the most powerful army in the multiverse, but even they like to save time and resources when possible. We mainly continue with Larry and Sarah from this point forward. A moment I really disliked at first was this elevator sequence. Not only does the mod, about 5 minutes before it ends, suddenly implement a cutscene, like dude, you made it this far, perfectly sticking to Half-Life's design philosophy, why include a singular, completely useless one now? And then, Sarah simply tells us that Argento died, and she does not go into detail at all. We never find out what happened, matter of fact. Like, come on, what? This is like if we were to meet Magnuson at the end of episode 2 and him telling you, oh, also Kleiner died. I assume this is probably because the voice actor wasn't a part of the project anymore or something, but even then, why have him die off screen? This actually frustrated me so much that I reached out to the creators via email specifically about this, and I did get an answer. Jose M. Ameyugo mentions that the long period of time between the Citizen Part 2 and the Citizen Returns made the final part of the script be a bit rushed. They mentioned in another interview how they were suffering from burnout making the Citizen Returns after the Citizen Part 2. Jose says he doesn't think there is an in-universe explanation as to what happened to Argento, but also mentions that the realization that nobody has plot armor in the dystopian setting of City 17 and friends could disappear from one day to the next seemed very fitting to us, which honestly did put things into perspective for me. Not getting to say goodbye to him hit me like a truck when it was revealed in the story, and this is exactly the kind of thing that would happen in a dystopian world like that of Half-Life. So actually, my anger towards the scene was me progressing through the 5 stages of grief. I still dislike the cutscene though. Okay, I'm gonna get into heavy spoiler territory now, so skip to the timestamp on screen if you just wanna see my final review instead. Okay, so, the mod has 2 different endings, and I can see a case being made to go with either one. We find the core of the facility that is producing the memory erasing poison. The only choice is to destroy it. This can only be done if somebody stays there and manually circumvents a stasis, whatever you get it. Somebody has to sacrifice themselves. Larry immediately offers himself up. He says he's gonna have to die someday, and he would love to do it for the fight of the people that saved him earlier. Sarah argues that all 3 of us should stay, but Larry says that it's senseless for all of us to die as well. And thus, Sarah activates the countdown. Ending A is to run away with Sarah, enter a minecart and have the explosion of the facility knock us out. This leads to us awakening on a beach together with Sarah and some others. We hear a radio broadcast saying that Freeman is currently inside the Citadel, and that there is hope for our children to live free of the Combine suppression. This is all accompanied by a beautiful soundtrack. It's a beautiful ending. Ending B is unlocked if you are to stay with Larry inside the Citadel. Larry will nag you to leave, but in the end he gives in. The explosion happens and we get evaporated. The finale shows the same memorial we saw earlier, now with a picture of Larry on it. And as Sarah moves out of the way, a picture of the player is added, the face being replaced by a smiling emoji. Both endings are beautiful in their own way, so whichever you prefer. Okay, we are out of spoiler territory now. So, why do I think so highly of the Citizen? Aside from the great and creative level design, the music, the voice acting itself being good, for the most part it's simply the characters and how they're integrated. Half-Life is about life, it's about the people. Half-Life 2 specifically shows how it's every human's hope and will to fight that counts when faced with a fascist government whose aim is to rob the people of every right and enslave them. Every person resisting counts. Half-Life 2 features so many small signs of life, so many people you can meet with their own unique personality, and so many examples of humans attempting to resist, be that successfully or not. The Citizen takes that exact aspect and cranks it up to the max. The couple at the basketball court that meets a tragic fate. The store owner Mo being a humorous fighter, who also ends up succumbing to the reign of the Combine. We have the story of people who fail to oppose and instead join in on the fascism and become traitors. We have people like Larry and Argento who go on to play important roles in the resistance. We have Sarah who stands for hope and reminds us of the fallen. And we have the eventual death of Argento that happens without much due gratitude that reminds us of how horrible the situation truly is. I believe the title, The Citizen, is a double entendre, both referring to the player starting as a citizen and to the citizen as in every citizen in City 17. The countless stories, of which we get presented some in this mod, most of which I haven't even told you in this video. It's these characters dynamically interacting with one another, how they respond to their environments. Larry, for example, responds to you picking up a barrel to climb into a vent.
Yeah, it might be easier if you stand on that.
This is exactly the quality of character interactions a Half-Life mod needs to have. Even if this means risking some people maybe not seeing it. It's exactly that which makes it so much better for those that do. And it's this life they're given through their characters that end up making for such a great story. The original The Citizen mod was made in only 7 months, with another 3 months afterwards spent on bug fixing. As is noted in the credits of each part and by the name of the dev team, these mods were made accidentally, which one of the creators described as, "It happened without much planning. We just went with what felt right at the time, purely as a hobby, without any special pretense," which I think is very beautiful. All this being said, I have some complaints, which mostly boil down to small, basically minute things, as I believe the gameplay was super fun. That being said, one huge complaint story-wise is, why was Breen actually there at the conference hall? If the Combine were tipped off about this assault happening, wouldn't they get Breen as far away from that building as possible? Why have him be in firing distance? I love the traitor arc, but that irked me a bit. Another complaint are some missed opportunities. The memorial, for example, could have featured images of people that actually died in the story, like Jeremy or Mo, for example. It also could have featured this abomination instead of the actual Odessa. Or alternatively, have that guy return on the rebel base too. A rebel base like that is a free pass at any crossover basically. For my final complaint, I think the G-Man should just be entirely removed. The G-Man truly had no relevance to the story. This could also fix the weird ending of the first mod to just have the advisor cause the train to crash and have that be it. So, for a conclusion, The Citizen and The Citizen Returns are both incredible mods as they are. Though if somebody's ever up to create a remaster of them that fixes some of the issues I mentioned, that would be great too. This should not hinder you from immediately going to play them yourself though. If you are planning to play this mod yourself, the Steam version comes with a lot of bugs. The best idea is to download the ModDB version of The Citizen and The Citizen Returns, and install their patches. When installing the patch for The Citizen Returns, make sure to not copy over the gameinfo.txt, as that will lead to some missing textures. Let me know what you think of these mods, and otherwise, thank you for watching.
Not again. I don't get to sit down for 5 minutes before some insubordinate player turns up in my holding cell.